Welcome, everybody, to Authentic Branding with Perez. Super excited here today because the thing with branding is, have you ever looked at your website? Have you ever looked at your social media and, kind of winced inside because you didn't feel like it was a reflection of you, reflection of the transformation that you've probably recently gone through? Well, Perez is a seasoned brand consultant for impact-driven brands. And so his specialty is taking the whole picture of the mental, physical, emotional, spiritual growth that's happening and articulate it in a way that, is a brand that your people resonate with. So I'm going to pitch it over to here. But
Yeah.
before I do, is also want to note something that, Ree is, soft-spoken at times, a little humble. And so Ree's actually worked with over 1,000 brands, high six-figure businesses, seven-figure businesses, eight-figure businesses, nine-figure businesses. So super excited for him to share his wisdom with us today. Ree, how are you doing?
Yeah, so good to be here, Sebastian. Let's have some fun. Let's rock and roll.
Let's do it. Okay, so the structure for today is we're going to do a little bit of introduction of Ree's story, what got him here. And then we're going to go into his Venn diagram that he has for authentic branding. And so feel free to put questions that you have in the chat here. We have some live members here. We're live streaming in the group as well. So we'll get to those questions afterwards. And with that, let's have some fun. So if you could share with us a bit of how did you get started with branding?
I took the non-traditional route into branding. Most people probably get their MBA and then they go to, work for a brand consulting firm. I kind of was a consultant for a lot of the advertising, marketing, and branding firms in New York City. And one of my clients, for some reason, reached out at the same time that I was going to reach out and said, "Hey, we were thinking about collaborating with you, and we want you to open up this division within our brand consultancy." Um, and I always had a really good sense of design eye, but I was a strategist at heart, and I understand, and I studied my degrees in organizational behavior and communications, and so I was fascinated with psychology and linguistics and language and all the things of why people behave the way that they do. And so I got recruited to head up this division. And next thing you know, I was kind of working with a lot of multinational firms in the biosciences field, way in over my head, but loving every minute of it. And fast forward, I just kept getting recruited at some of these big consulting firms, working with Fortune 500 brands, but taking a look at not just what does your logo look like, but how does this brand create an impact culture, both internally inside the organization, but also externally in the marketplace. And so that led me to be a senior brand consultant at one of the top global branding firms at the time in New York. And I've had a colorful career, but fast forward to the time when I was wondering, why was I getting passed up for this next career move? And at the time I thought, oh, maybe it's my sexual orientation, or maybe it's because my being a minority, whatever, all those sort of things. But I met with the global HR director, and she says that I didn't have enough gray hair, which translates to I didn't look old enough. So I was about 30 at the time, and I still don't think I look my age, thank God. I just turned 50, I'm 51 and I'm turning 52 in March. But imagine early 30s, I didn't look old enough. And I was like, huh. And so that's when I knew that perception at the time, that's when it clicked for me, that perception, people's perception of you will influence and impact your career trajectory. And then in entrepreneurship, it'll impact people's willingness to buy, recommend, or support you. And so I left that through a series of things and started my own branding agency about 12 years ago. Uh, and I dedicated my mission to helping entrepreneurs and small businesses who, this is 12 years ago,
Hmm.
who sucked at branding. In fact, they haven't even branding wasn't even a big part of the conversation back then. Most people were talking about direct response marketing,
Mm,
and maybe they were relating to branding as a logo at best.
mm,
But when I started to proselytize and talk about, no, this is what branding really is, it sort of it clicked for people. You're like, wow, this is next level. And so that, that I think I answered a little bit more than your question, but I was just telling my story of like how I got to that. And so this is like my 13th year on my own, working with with all sorts of like purpose-driven, impact-driven brands.
mm. Absolutely. And I feel like everybody on the entrepreneurial journey can relate to feeling like you have this value to share, especially service driven, impact driven, mission driven. It's like there's this love, this caring, this passion to serve. Yet, if what we're leading with, doesn't line up, we don't get it respect. We don't get seen, we don't get heard, even though we have that gold to share. And so I really resonate with your story of you had everything inside, yet just the way that they were looking at it wasn't getting the respect.
Well, yeah, and one thing I'll add to that too is that where I went to work was, so this actually happens. People make a decision within seconds, and it happens in the subconscious. It happens in the unconscious, depending on your purview. But it doesn't happen so necessarily overtly, and it could be as little at the time. People were printing their business cards on, I don't know, Staples or Office Depot, whatever, or they had some cheesy, tacky website. And when I got to know these entrepreneurs, they were doing some amazing work, and it just wasn't a match. It wasn't alignment for who they are and what they were doing. And so they weren't aware, like, why am I not converting, or why are people not buying? And so maybe they had the wrong message. Maybe they had, whatever, the wrong visuals and all that, sort of the wrong website, but they weren't able to pinpoint it because most people won't tell you overtly, hey, I don't want to work with you because I don't trust your brand. I don't trust the image that you're putting out. And so we went to work on reverse engineering what's the desired perception. And in fact, that's the definition that I've been using over the past 12 years, that brand is a desired perception. And if brand is a desired perception, you technically don't own your brand. It resides in people's minds. And so the best that you could do is to shape, influence that desired perception that you want. And hopefully you get back that which you're trying to portray.
Mm,
My thinking has evolved since then. Maybe we'll get into that, but this was sort of the philosophical point of departure that I looked from, is like, what's the perception that you need to create and own that is going to distinguish you and differentiate you, and also hopefully magnetize people towards you, the right people that you want towards what you have to offer.
mm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the way that I visualize it, because I'm a visual thinker, is there's the outer world, what we're putting on the outside or what's being seen.
Yeah.
And then there's the inner world of
Yep.
who we are. And that's what I'm curious to go into next, because a fun
Okay.
fact about you, that I know that I'm sharing with everybody here is that you've also done deep work leading groups of people through journeys, experiences, deep retreats where
Yeah.
it's very close knit, it's very deep.
Yep.
There's a different support around. And so let's go into the spiritual side of things, and not to throw away, what's on the front, but now that we've established the front, it's like now
Let's
um,
go into that. So
yeah, let's go into that.
as a segue into that, I feel, when you tell your story, often at times you're like, oh, wait a minute, I forgot about that part of the story, right? But
It was me all the time.
when I this is relevant to your question,
Yeah.
but before I went and started my own agency, I kept getting recruited at these other consulting firms, and my last post was in Dubai. So I had an opportunity to move out there and live out there and consult out there for a big firm. But at the time, this is before FaceTime, before all the other stuff, but like, I had met someone online, and I thought, I was in New York and he was in South Dakota. And I can't explain it, but it was one of those like soul connections just from a phone call. And I was like, what is happening? And so we fell in love rather quickly. And I was like, I got this job offer in Dubai. And he was like, well, I hate New York. And I was like, I'm not moving to South Dakota. So I said, let's go to Dubai. And we
Yeah.
did. And fast forward, like he only lasted a week. His dad was diagnosed with stage 4 liver cancer. And our relationship was still very much in the early phases that it didn't have the foundation to like move through that life-changing experience. And thankfully that happened for me because it really put me in a really dark depression, like wondering why was this happening to me? That was my mindset at the time. And I was so heartbroken. I was probably literally depressed for several months. And I was like, this is such a short, like I never get like distraught over a person, but it really turned my insides out. And I took 6 months off to figure out life. I went to Sedona, Arizona. I like put myself in sort of retreat, mostly to heal my broken heart. But inside that process, I had like all these like I just got in touch with my spiritual side, which there were times like I always knew that I had like this intuition, or sometimes I just know things and I didn't understand why I know things. And that was able to put some language around this whole spiritual side of me. And so my company, the company that I started 12 years ago, is called Branding for the People. And that was the vision that came out of that. And it was really from a spiritual soul purpose place of like, you know, help. I was really in the business of transformation. How can I help transform people's lives? And so that became like my mission and my purpose. But somewhere along the 12 years, in helping to brand so many companies and really giving all the stuff that I just described, I knew that there was like another level. And I knew that the entrepreneurial space and CEOs and founders and also a lot of my colleagues and peers were kind of going through this process of evolving. And I knew that there's a point in time that a lot of us, I would assert, and I'll speak for myself, but we go through and like, okay, well, what's next? Like what's the next season? What's the next chapter? What's the next mountain? And and I knew that your business and consequently your brand will only grow as as big as the inner work that you're doing. So to relate to your point is I started to host retreats, journeys where we would do the deep inner work. And it's from that well, that source, when you get to the source of that, then everything else flows from that. But more importantly, like maybe your vision gets reclarified, maybe your vision gets transformed, maybe you realize, oh, I'm actually slightly off path and I need to get centered back into what is going to not only impact other people, but what's also going to nourish my soul. And so uh, I've hosted 5 retreats, which is during the pandemic years. Like that was a lot. And it took a lot of something. But I tell you something, even for myself, like I was tinkering around with that because it's unlike an agency model, because I was excited about it and it didn't feel like work. It felt like another level of like fulfilling on my soul's purpose.
Mhm.
Anyway, let me pause there to see if you want me to like interact or jump around if that was helpful. I don't know if I dodged your original question, but
No, that was
that's
great.
what
That was
came up.
great. That was great. So the last thing that you'd said was, soul work. So let's connect to the mastermind leader. They have community on their mind, but they have community on their heart. And so birthing that with a mastermind group, the first 10, and maybe you can grow from there. So just like how you felt doing those retreats was a, evolution, it was an expansion of who you
Yeah.
were, what you were doing, and it was coming from, it was an extension of your soul. How would you, yeah, let's open the conversation of a person who does feel that mastermind group, that community on their heart, on their soul, and they want they want their brand to be an extension of their soul. And probably they're going through a lot of changes as it is. So that can be discombobulating, in itself.
Sure.
So, yeah, can you guide us on, what are some starting points that you would recommend of having that pure place, that service place that we connect to, that flowing through of what's being seen online?
Um, well, maybe I'm making the question a bit more complex for myself, but here's how I'll respond. So I'm thinking about a mastermind leader, right?
Yeah.
And their own personal brand, and then also what is going to connect with their soul. And the question is sort of, what are some of the guidelines that I might offer in that process? So let me see if I can get to that
Okay.
with starting with this framework. So I think it's important for me to also share, because we're all allowed to evolve, right? And I come from this mindset of, I heard this phrase once. Do you have 12 years of experience, or do you have 1 year of experience repeated 12 times? And so every year I'm always looking to innovate and evolve rather than just doing the same thing over and over every year. And so from that line of thinking, I said, well, for years I've been talking about branding being a desired perception. And over the past year, with the rise of AI, with the rise of deep fake and all the stuff, I realized that perception isn't always reality. And so I see, I'm a trained consultant, so I think in Venn diagrams. So I think of a Venn diagram. And so the first Venn diagram is sort of this perceptual space. Yeah, you want to have the right perception in the marketplace, but you can have the right perception and have a crappy delivery, a service, product, whatever. And that doesn't make you a strong brand,
Mm,
that you just have the right perception.
mhm.
So the other piece is that it has to have, so there's two other pieces that I've built out that I think a mastermind leader should think about. It should also, let me see if I can pull up my Venn diagram. Okay,
Nice.
well,
Mm.
maybe I won't pull it up. I have it handy. I'll stay focused on here. But the other thing, just stay with me here, is like, then the other one here is relational. So first one's perceptual, the second one is relational, meaning a brand is always interacting with an audience. Now that audience isn't only your clients and customers,
Mhm.
it's your strategic partners, it's influencers, right? It's your employees, it's your team. Like, you want to think about the brand being the nucleus, and what are all the relationships and the web of relationships that your brand is speaking to. And like any relationship, you want to not only just attract that relationship, but you have to nurture it, and you have to develop it, and you evolve with that relationship. So there's an exchange that happens in the second domain. And then the third domain, and this is where I work with, I relate to myself as someone who's very um, spiritual, and but also very grounded. And so I think this third piece is tangible. So what do I mean by that? And there's a lot of other words I could give it, but what I've assigned to this piece is, you can have the right perception and you have a great relationship, but ultimately for an entrepreneur or mastermind leader, you want to look at what are the tangible outcomes that the brand is going to deliver on.
Mhm.
And I'm speaking to maybe a set of audiences where you can have all the spiritualness and then not produce a result, right? I think producing a result, we are here to experience in this 3D world. We're here to experience this 3D experience. I'm like, I know that sounds circular, but we are meant to have those experiences. It's not just all, the being spiritual. And so impacting your business so that you can impact more people, creating outcomes for your clients, your mastermind attendees. So I think this tangible piece of it, and I think it's the intersection of the perceptual, the relational, and the tangible is where I believe the next evolution of branding is going to be the strongest. Imbued in that whole thing is coming from a soulful and purposeful place. And I think that's a given across the board. So now to your question, sorry for the long lead up to this, but now to your question, if what I would propose for a mastermind leader and for someone who's led groups is, really you're attracting people who share the same beliefs and values as you.
Mm.
And it really is, um, this might be obvious or this might be new to depending on where you're at in your mastermind journey. But to me, branding is all about an alignment of values. You are going to have a relationship with people, most likely that you share the same values. So your beliefs, your values, but also the delivery and the mechanism format. So, for example, I've been in masterminds where I have alignment of values, but the format in which it's conducted doesn't resonate with me. And that's okay.
Mhm.
Right. And then there's another format where shared values, share alignment, but the experience, and this is where I'm talking about like the experience or the container, the mechanism which that mastermind is being led. I want that experience because for me, I'd rather pay money for experiences rather than physical things. That's just where I'm at in my life. And so, what's the experience that I'm going to have with the people in that mastermind? So, think from the perspective of what's the experience that you want to create, and ultimately, what's the experience that you want people to be that is going to attract the people that you want. So, using a case in point example, so it's not theoretical, I wanted people who were attracted to a journey or to a retreat, and they were not a fit if they didn't want that format. And I wanted people who are willing to do the deep work and excavate internally what is their sole purpose. And if someone just came to me and they just want to make a shit ton of money, sorry, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to curse
Go
thing,
for
but
it. It's authentic
if
branding. So
it's authentic. If
yeah.
they just want to make money and that's their only driver, then not a fit. Um, I think the other thing I would say, and this probably falls out of what I just said in your mastermind group and what I did with my retreats, is one word. It's curation. And so just because someone can spend X amount of dollars to attend my retreat doesn't matter to me. If it's not a full alignment, if it's not only gonna serve the group, then it was a non-start. So I think some of the best masterminds are created with that curation in mind. So in summary, curation, experience, values, alignment. And I guess, I'll throw in one other thing because I like to think in threes and fives is sort of like your vision for the mastermind, right?
Mhm.
Like share your vision as a mastermind leader. And because the world doesn't necessarily need another mastermind.
Mhm.
So if you come from that perspective, what's the hole in the market that you're filling?
Mhm.
And oftentimes it has to do with belonging, connection, and it has to do with people being seen, valued, heard, and that they're able to contribute. Anyway, I just rambled on. So feel free to interact with me with what I just said, or if there's questions.
Yeah, this is great. Got the gears turning, and so I want to summarize some key pieces here.
Yeah.
So number one, the three parts: perception, and I have this in the comments for everybody's live here. So perception, how is your brand seen? Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, relational. All the people your brand speaks to, which is so interesting. Um, yeah, clients, customers, employees, greater network, social followers, all the people brand speaks to. So number one, perception. Number two, relational. Number three, tangible. It's the actual outcomes the brand is going to deliver.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're not living in the 1990s where people can't post reviews. Like people will share the word on if it's good or not. So I love that. Is like if there's no tangible thing, then the brand is hollow. So perception, relational, tangible. One piece, and then yeah, the fives. And I think that's fun. You think of three at fives. That's cool. Um, Yeah, so let's double click on this. And so what I heard from you is attracting the people who have the same vision as you, same beliefs, same values. Might not have the same vision at first, but beliefs,
Or
values,
they're at least aligned or they're inspired by your vision.
right.
I think
Exactly.
for me, like I'm always, I may not have the same vision as another mastermind leader or another person, but if I see their vision, I can see myself being a part or deciding if I want to opt into that vision or be a support of that vision. I'm working with a brand right now, and it and then it took me a while, but because of the space that I'm in my own journey, I was able to like really connect with the vision, not intellectually, but like deeply connect to their vision for this brand. And I think that what that opens up, and this is a different scenario, but I think it applies even as a brand. So I'm their brand consultant, but it makes it easier for me to refer, recommend, participate in that vision. That's important because I think, I think we overlook the fact that at the end of the day, we will refer brands that we are absolutely aligned with. And so, when you make your vision clear and you do that transfer of inspiration to another person or group of people,
Mm.
they'll become the walking, talking advocates and champions of your brand.
Mm. I love that. Transfer of inspiration. So
Yeah.
they become the walking, talking advocates of your brand.
You like that?
Oh, got the chills with that. Yeah, transfer of inspiration. Okay, so I have a question for you on this,
Yeah.
which is, for me personally, and if anybody listening here, let's see if you can relate. If I think about, what do I want people to see? What do I want them to, per, you know, think about me? I get lost in my head so quickly, because
Okay.
there's a million different permutations, there's a million different strategies, and the time and just like lost in the sauce. So, and I've been there, and it sucks. And yet, when you said, attracting the people who have the same beliefs and value as you, that for me completely switches it. So it's like, okay, what are my beliefs? What are my values? What is my vision? And yeah,
Yeah.
if I just put that out, that feels way easier, way more exciting, way more natural. And it also feels powerful. It feels like instead of me trying to, fit into a little
Course.
box and make sure I got the right way and I'm, looking right, it's just, this is who I am. And I'm being the lighthouse to unite the allies.
It's good. I
So,
like that.
so what
Oh,
I'm,
I'm sorry. Sorry to cut you off. I was just agreeing with you. I like
no, no,
that.
no, it's all good.
Unite the allies.
It's all good. Uh, yeah. So, I mean, this is what those words that you just shared activated in me. And
Mm.
so my question then is, yeah, say I'm getting clear on my beliefs, my values, my vision. And everybody, in this group is mission driven mastermind leaders, aspiring to be or already are one. So mission vision is central. So how would you recommend sharing your beliefs, values, vision online, the website, the social profiles?
Yeah. I have this heuristic in my brain that I feel called to share. So I love using this analogy where if a guy walks into the room or a group of people and he says, I'm the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, well, who's this jackass? Right. But if a guy walks into the room and he says things in a particular way, he uses a very distinctive vocabulary, he dresses a certain way, he behaves in a certain way, and he knows more about the subject matter than everyone else in the room, then he derives the perception that he's the smartest person in the room. So I know that a lot of brands and companies, and I'm not saying not to do this, I know that part of the process is to outline your values and your beliefs on your website.
Right. Right.
Um, I think for me, the the more powerful opportunity is to translate that into a brand story or your manifesto
Ooh,
in such a way that it actually what gives me a window into your story in a way that is poetic, it's evocative, it lays out your values and practice and your beliefs and by I can derive, oh, you must believe in this because of how this manifesto is written. And so now it becomes seemingly lip service, like, oh, check, we have our values on here. Here's the other problem with values. A lot of times people use values that everyone else uses. Oh, we value trust and
Integrity.
customer integrity. Like, yeah, every business should ostensibly value those, but I want to know, and this probably gets into this polarization. I think there's a healthy polarization aspect that can happen. The word that I like to use is having a contrarian point of view.
Hmm.
So, like one of my clients, Angelique Brewers, she was known as the corporate agent. She helped service professionals get corporate contracts. We rebranded her to Bold House, Haus. Anyway, she's a badass, and part of her opening of her manifesto is a statement that says, "We believe." No, it says they say that rules were meant to be broken. So you're taking a common phrase in the zeitgeist. They say that rules were meant to be broken. We say that they shouldn't exist in the first place. And so it just this shift of like what people are normally talking about and creating your own point of view, that's far more powerful than me reading your 5 values. I worked with a weight loss coach influencer, and his target audiences were all Weight Watchers. Like that's his avatar, the women who follow Weight Watchers. And I said, you should come up with a position that says our weight was not meant to be watched. So good. And so the point is, it's like, yeah, it's not meant to be watched, and then he obviously teaches a whole other thing. So I think coming up with a manifesto or a story or a contrarian point of view helps to exemplify your vision, your values, your beliefs. To me, that's a bit more powerful and a bit more exciting, probably a bit more fun. And you said that we were going to have fun on this interview. So let's pull up something fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. I'm just yeah, I'm feeling the power of that. And so many things are clicking in, synthesizing. So I wanna just really spend some time here on this because I feel
Sure.
like this is incredible. This is, there's the quote that genius is simplicity. And I feel like there's massive simplicity happening right now. And so
Good.
yeah, I feel like with and I just want to relate to what you shared. So yeah, having the mission, vision, values on the website. I feel like it's great and for clarity, like as a starting point. Let's get clear on that first, and then boom, what you just said of like, let's have that origin story, because then you're just checking so many boxes in
Sure.
one
Sure.
full story. So yeah, so as one thing, and I think this is a great action item for anybody who's listening to this is let's go back to the story, and that's what I'm thinking for myself is like because I do have the values that really mean everything to me, and so making sure that they're in there because sometimes when I'm speaking I might say it, but sometimes I kind of forget, but like make sure that those are in there.
That are in there. You actually just prompted me to make sure that I say one thing because I got lost in my own sharing. For me, I think the best way that your values and beliefs are also best expressed
Mhm.
is in reality and actually how you show up. Like you could say, this is why I said perception is like one piece of it. You can have it on your website, but like how you show up. Have you ever had this experience where you meet someone, maybe it was like your hero, or maybe it was like someone who online is a big influencer or whatever, and you meet him or her in person, and it just destroys your, I don't know, admiration of this person because you're like, oh wow, this person's actually an asshole. I'm
Yeah,
being extreme
every
to make my point, right? But it's like that's happened to me so many times, and particularly with where I sit, right? In branding and around marketing, you're like, when you're kind of a little bit too close to how the sausage is made, you're like, oh, wait a minute, these people don't all have it figured out. Or, and this is not a bash on influencers. I'm just keeping it real. It's like, yes, how you freaking show up in real life is to me is far more important than what your reviews say, what your website says, or even what you say about yourself on social media. It's how you actually goes back to like how do you treat the waitress, the waiter? How do you, like those little moments. And I think subconsciously we're paying attention to how people behave in even the smallest moments. Anyway, I just felt important. I felt it was important to say that when to your question, how best do you show your values and your vision? Is be that a full alignment. So we talked about authenticity. You opened up with authenticity, and we were going to talk about authentic brands. To me, that's the alignment of who you are and who you say you are, but more importantly, who other people perceive you to be. And it's those three things. When that is mostly in alignment, we're allowed to kind of make mistakes and veer off, and you're like, oh shit, I didn't mean to say that. Oh, I didn't know that that has an it. But the closer that we are making sure that those three are aligned, I think that is what creates ultimately the trust that we want from people, because they know, hey, I'm getting the real deal. I'm not getting a script. Anyway, thought I'd share that.
So much awesome stuff here. So yeah, I'm thinking for the aspiring mastermind leader or existing one, it's values that I live by, values that you live by, because that'll be the extension. It's not like just kind of slapping a sign on a building and saying like, that's what's there. It's like, no, who am I? And that'll be, as the leader, that it is the extension of what's in the group.
As by way of sharing a little bit about me for people who don't know me, like I came out in the 90s in New York, and at the time it wasn't safe to come out. And so I've wrestled with, how can I be my authentic self? I've wrestled with that. Like, my whole journey has been like, how do I be my authentic self without necessarily selling out or compromising or whatever. And so I wrote a book a few years ago. It's not really to plug my book, but it's to make a point. The book is called Your Brand Should Be Gay, Even If You're Not. And sometimes people don't know that I'm gay. If you didn't know, now you do. But the meta conversation for me was, I chose to have a book with that title because I think, because the subtitle is, it's the art and science of creating an authentic brand. But if I said, hey, learn how to create an authentic brand, how many people would stop and be like, hey, pay attention? So I came up with something that was a bit provocative, boldly titled. But the real power for me is like, I'm probably the most authentic in my life since writing that book, being on my own as an entrepreneur. And I can come out as gay and not care what people think, or not be driven by like what people think. Like, there's probably some people that are going to freaking love it, and there's some people that are going to hate it. And it's not that I'm trying to make people hate me. I know that there's a lot of talk around, you have to be polarizing, you have to, make sure people hate you. Like, that's not really my MO. It's not my aim. I think it's a natural fallout that people might not align with that. And by the way, I could have meant your brand should be happy. So I'm also teaching on a meta level how like language has a powerful impact on branding. Anyway, that's just a side note. So like, that's authenticity is not just a buzzword for me. It's something that I feel like I've lived and living and constantly aiming to make sure, like, does this feel true to me? Does this feel aligned for me? And that's what I want for a mastermind leader, like, wherever you are in your journey, to have that be your compass. Because there's a lot of things you can do as a mastermind leader, but what's there for you to do, and what's your unique expression?
Mm-hmm. Mm. And how do you know? So once a person is clear on their values and they're living by them, or they have that standard that they're trying to uphold, and they're more clear on who they are, their mission, their vision, and it will continue to evolve.
Sure.
But at least they've got their true north, and they have a greater sense of who they are, where they stand in the world, what they stand for. How do you approach it then of what to share, and that is in alignment with the yeah, it was in alignment of still, growing the mastermind and one
You mean
frame.
like what to share on social media, like in marketing?
Yeah. So for one side of the spectrum is just like, here's every little nook and cranny of me or whatever, Other thing is like, okay, for my mission and vision,
Sure.
here are the pieces that are important to, lean into.
Yeah. This is a little bit tricky. Here's how I'll approach the question is I feel like I know for myself, but I don't think that I would be so arrogant to say that I know how to tell other people that they will know. I think each individual person would know if this is something that is true to their brand or not.
Mm.
That being said, um, I think I also, me personally, I come from the point of view of uh, not everything is relevant
Right, right.
to your target audiences. Like, I may not necessarily care what your political views are per se, uh, but if I was a political influencer, it's very important for me to share my political point of view.
Hmm.
I don't I don't think necessarily people care what my political views are in the realm of branding and transformation. Now, if they do, and I choose to share that, I think that's a choice that I know. Like, hey, this feels good for me to share or not. So I think it's an individual choice on what they choose to share, but I think the more important thing is it goes back to um I'm going to pull out another Venn diagram.
Nice.
But so when it comes to like messaging and yeah, brand marketing and messaging, I kind of look at three things, which is are you going to say something that you can credibly own? So this is the realm of credibility. Like, am I a credible person to say this?
Mhm.
And you can apply this to any industry or topic that you want. So there's an element of credibility. Then there's an element from a branding and marketing perspective, which is what's unique and what's different in the category. I gave you an example earlier, like, okay, well, if everyone's saying this is my unique message. But then there's this third piece, which is what I touched, which is what I said earlier, which is, well, what's relevant? What do your target audiences care about, and what do they want to know your position, your stance, or your point of view on? And sometimes, again, I can't attribute like a percentage of it, but not everything is relevant to your target audiences. At the end of the day, a lot of your target audiences probably care that you can help solve the problems that you're claiming to solve.
Mhm.
But when you look at holistically, can you credibly own that message? Is it something that is going to differentiate or distinguish your brand? And is it something that is relevant for your audiences? And I think there you can kind of create some guidelines on what to say and what not to say.
Oh, love that. Yeah, that just answers so many questions. And yeah, so I
Good.
feel like that's the work that I do is I help people start with credibility of like, where's your mountain of experience?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I like that of relevancy, what's going to be relevant for your audience, and then the unique is cool. And yeah, let's go into that some more if you are okay with it. So,
Sure.
like your book, like that was like you shared, that was an example. You could have gone different ways with it, but you did something that stood out. And so, yeah, uniqueness. What's some like insights or
On
ideas
how to be
on?
unique.
Yeah.
Um, there's broadly speaking, I think when I'm working with brands and when I'm teaching this topic, um, first you want to identify the landscape in which you're coexisting and you're operating in, right? And either you're in a crowded playground and you're trying to carve out your own sandbox within that playground, otherwise known as the white space, right? You're trying to find what's the white space within this playground. and find out, okay, well, everyone's here. I'm going to put myself here. That's one Broadway. The second Broadway is everything is crowded. I can't find any white space. And so you're in a very competitive, maybe saturated market, in which case you need to find another angle,
Mm,
such as I'm better. It could be a functional, economical, or emotional kind of benefit. Like I'm better, I am cheaper, or I'm actually more expensive because I deliver more value, or I deliver result. Like you need to find your own angle. So let's use mastermind leaders, right? Let's just operate from the premise that there are lots of mastermind leaders. And in the realm of the mastermind leader landscape, okay, if you can't find a white space, you're like, okay, well, my mastermind is different because of this one ingredient.
mhm.
Or I heard so many things, right? This is, it's a guru-led mastermind or a self-led mastermind or invite only. You kind of have to look at the landscape and kind of see what
Yeah.
are some of the selling points that people say, and then come up with your own better or different or unique angle. It could be, I don't know, you're getting me to brainstorm a little bit out loud, but that's my thought process.
Yeah.
It is an exploration, and it really is contingent upon the landscape in which you're evaluating your brand to be different.
Mhm. Yeah, it totally makes sense for me. It's like who you serve can be a differentiation as well. How you serve them is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
What's the end point? Um, yeah, so
I
awesome.
mean, visually, you can come up with creative ways visually, right? Like, so my book is pink, right? How many pink books do you see out there?
Yeah.
So visually, a mastermind could have a whole unique look and feel that is just so different. Like when I started branding a lot of the coaches in the entrepreneur space 12 years ago, I would get inspiration from outside. This is a tool that maybe your team can do. I would get inspiration from outside the coaching industry.
Mhm.
Why? Because at the time, a lot of them, it was like design, it was like in a design Ebola. Ebola. Sorry, I just saw the Zoom thing. It was so bad back then. I was like, what is happening? Why people don't have a sense of design? Or well, can't you just hire a professional person? Now that has since evolved. I love that, there are a lot more tools now where people can have decent looking branding. But even that, it's like, okay, what's this next level? But where I get inspiration is I look outside of the industry. Do they have Equinox in where you live?
I believe
Equinox.
so. I believe so.
Yeah, so they started in New York, but and now they're everywhere. But it's a fitness club that took the idea of a gym and a spa, and how can we make the gym have more of a spa-like experience, from the aesthetics to even just having how gyms smell, like they have all these air filtration
Mhm.
systems in there, right? So getting inspiration from outside your industry is one of the best ways to sort of differentiate your brand. Is don't do what everyone else is doing. Now,
Right.
obviously, that can play out into the visual aspect of it, but it can also play out to the experiential aspect of it as well.
I love that. And it's like permission. It's a permission slip to have fun too, be creative. And it's like these people that you're serving with your mastermind group, your community, how are other ways that you can make it awesome for them?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so we're rounding the bend here of starting to wrap up here. So
Okay.
I want to do a summary here of the things we went through because I've got a lot of notes. I'm looking at them in the Zoom chat, and I feel like there's some great actionable things here that can be immediately taken action on, immediately start increasing the magnetism, of a person's message, of their brand, even in conversations, just knowing how to use parts of this of your method. So what we covered today was starting off with your Venn diagram of from a big picture. Number one, perception, how your brand is seen. Number two, relational, all the people your brand speaks to. And number three, the tangible, the outcomes the brand is going to deliver on. So I like that as a like an umbrella for everything. Like that's the big picture. And then, yeah, I want to go with that quote that you said, which is attracting the people who have the same beliefs and values as you. And I feel like that's something I'm going to always come back home to. You know, I might be scrolling and see an ad and there's this strategy and that strategy. And
Mm.
okay. Just attracting the people who have the same beliefs and values as you. Love that. And how do we do that? We got to live. We got to know what our values are, a handful of those values. I like 3 or 4 max, and then live them every day. And then make sure that our story says it in there. Such a golden nugget there. And maybe have some fun with a manifesto. I like that example that you used of they say blank, we say. I
Yeah.
love that. I think it's so perfect for mastermind groups because there's they and us, there's the team element. That's what I feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the last piece here is, yeah, how to have our brand be an extension of our soul is what do we stand for? And so what are we credible on so that we're not talking out, we're not talking about things that we don't know about truly. We're
Yeah.
on a firm foundation, relevancy, so we know who we're talking to with our ideal clients, what makes sense to them. And then with that lane, how can we have some fun and be unique, be different?
Yeah. There it is. I hope that was useful for people listening in. And, you know, uh, for me, branding is not so much necessarily like a do this, then this, like a formula. To me, it's like a way of thinking. It's a way of approaching the expression of you. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, like your business is an expression, albeit not necessarily their identity, but it is an expression of the founder, the CEO, the mastermind leader. And hopefully people know along that journey too that if you just take that one piece of it, like you are not, give yourself permission to fail as well.
Mm.
And that doesn't, just because you might mess up on certain things, you may fail at some aspects as a mastermind leader, but that doesn't mean you're a failure. And so when you can learn to distinguish you and your expression, it gives you some freedom to be able to continue to express and continue to experiment. At least that's what I told is my human design. My human design is loves to experiment and things. And I feel like that's how I've learned. So that's my approach. I know someone will probably give you here's my 5-step formula,
Yeah.
but I'd much rather teach or inspire people to approach how they think about their brand that's true to them, but borrowing from like what kind of works in some other industries.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like that I'm so glad that you spoke to that because I know for myself, maybe others too, it can be easy to get in the perfectionist mindset where everything needs to be perfect and before it's okay to go public or before it's okay to grow or before it's okay to bring new members in. And then guess what? We read a book, we go on a retreat, we grow, and then the whole thing needs to change again. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm hearing from you is permission that it's evolving, it's dynamic. And this quote that I've heard once is, we don't need to be perfect to change someone's life. Yeah.
That's right. I love that.
All right.
Love that. Thank you.
Okay. So if there's any questions here, feel free to put them in the chat. And while we have a moment here, we'll go ahead and close up here. And where can people find more about you? So, they've resonated with this message and they're like, okay, interesting. Like a dose of this was great. Can't imagine what, more of your guidance looks like. Where can they
Cool.
learn more about working with you?
Yeah, happy to answer that. There's also a question on the ICA from Laura.
ideal client avatar, I would think.
Yeah. How do we feel? How do we address questions, Sebastian?
Let's see, we can do through audio with a brief question. So if you can keep
Okay.
the question to 30 or so seconds, 30 seconds.
Yeah. Laura has a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Laura, you can say it if you like.
I'm
Hi, Laura.
sorry. I'm just loving this call. Thank you so much. It's
You're
music to my
welcome.
ears. It's
Yes.
incredible. So I'm in Camino de Santiago, and I want to launch a movement with rural women
With
and
what women?
rural women.
Rural women. Okay.
Yeah. So I have already started doing that, but my mastermind ideal client would be kind of pilgrims, people who really, international background, who want to help us fund local projects and to create a kind of Sesame Street along the way, basically. So I want to launch my website, matria.love, and I want to inspire people from my community, Galicia, all over the world. But at the same time, I want to inspire partners like you.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. What's I'm sorry, maybe I missed it. What's your question? How can we help?
Yeah, how can I address different messages, kind of, for different audiences? Like, I want to create a membership for rural women to spread, personal development for them. But my ideal, clients would be members of this mastermind that might have
Yeah.
met us along Camino.
Okay, cool. Yeah, a very simple framework is always speak to the conversation that they're having in their head. So what are the excuse me, what are the top 3 to 5 problems that your audiences are experiencing or having? What are their wake up in the middle of the night problems, right? Speak to those problems, their fears and their frustrations. And then you might find that if you have different audience segments, they might have different problems or there might be nuanced problems. The other layer is that I might, so let's say making money is a problem, but different audience segments express their problem around money differently, right? I don't know how to find clients, or I want to make my money work better for me. Like I'm making money, but I want it to amplify for me. Or I know how to make money, but I don't know how to save money. So you see how all 3 of those different problems around money, the message segmentation changes. So my recommendation is to start with the problems that they're solving, that you're solving for them, and then speak to that and try to get to the tone and the voice that they're having that is what is most relevant to them. And then and then it's always about iterating and testing to see what people resonate with when you're having a sales conversation with them. So good luck with that. Thank you so much for the question. Did that help?
Thank you. Yeah, sure, of course.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
thank you.
Awesome.
I'm loving the whole thing here.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
awesome. Well, thank you so much, Laura. Yeah, so to answer your question, Sebastian, listen, I think a good central place for people, if they wanted to connect, I'm happy to connect. Just go to reperez.com, and I'll spell that because some people think it's Ray Perez, but it's Re, and then Perez, Perez.com. So, I'm a speaker, investor, author, brand consultant. And I can't say that I'm the most active on social media these days because also my brand isn't necessarily predicated on on all of that per se. I'm kind of like the guy behind a lot of these brands that have big influencers and followings, and I'm okay with that. So anyway, reperez.com. Thank you so much for your time and thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. RePerez.com. And thank you so much, Ree. That's been the authentic branding for your mastermind group. And thanks so much. Is there any last message you'd like to share?
No, just thank you for the work that you're doing, Sebastian, and putting this together, for your open heart, like, I've always had resonance and connection with you from when we met 5, 6 years ago. So thank you for doing the work that you're doing in the world. I really appreciate you. And I look forward to our next conversation.